In today's video, we will listen to an in-depth conversation between two experts about the internal world of modern leaders.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are really opening up the organizational chart, aren't we? We're diving deep into what might be the most critical factor for modern success.
Yeah, the leader's internal world. Yeah, that's right.
We're not really talking strategy or finance today. It's about the mindset, the psychological toolkit. Yeah, the stuff you need for truly effective leadership in these wild, complex, and constantly changing environments we're all in.
Exactly. And based on the material you shared, our mission, if you like, is to try and define the right size leader. What does that optimal balance look like?
Great. So we're exploring those essential emotional skills, things like empathy, resilience, and then contrasting them with the major psychological hurdles, the ego, unchecked narcissism, those cognitive blind spots, things that contribute.
Precisely. They can quickly undo even the most brilliant executive.
And finding that balance, well, that's the real hinge point for sustained success.
Okay, but before we get into the specific skills, we kind of have to touch on that foundation question. Are great leaders born or are they made? What about the genetics part?
The classic nature versus nurture debate. The sources are pretty clear here, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, research confirms about maybe 25% of leadership behaviors seem linked to genetic factors, but the overwhelming consensus is that development is absolutely key.
So nurture wins out, mostly.
Yes, leadership is largely a learned skill, and the fantastic thing is we know the human brain has neuroplasticity, meaning it can change.
Exactly. It has the capacity to continually change and develop.
So even if you weren't, born with the quote-unquote perfect set of traits, you can absolutely build these core capabilities.
Okay, good. So let's unpack that toolkit then. Where do we start?
The sources repeatedly highlight something often seen as more important than just raw intellect: emotional intelligence.
Absolutely. Emotional intelligence, or EI.
And it's basically the capacity to appraise, regulate, and express emotion, both in yourself and in others.
And then using that deep understanding to manage relationships better, make smarter decisions.
The data is just really clear on this. EI often takes precedence over traditional IQ when it comes to predicting effective leadership success.
Right. Daniel Goleman famously broke EI down to 5 components. But maybe instead of listing all 5, which ones does the research suggest are the absolute must-haves, the minimum requirement for leaders today?
That's a good way to frame it. We can probably condense that roadmap down to 2 pillars that really, really matter for the modern leader: self-awareness and empathy.
Okay, self-awareness first.
Self-awareness is, well, it's foundational. It's knowing, accepting, and valuing your own feelings, your capabilities, and, yeah, your flaws too. If you don't have that internal calibration, that sort of honesty with yourself, everything else just kind of falls apart.
And if self-awareness is the internal dial, then empathy is how you tune into the outside world.
Nicely put, exactly. Empathy, it's the 4th pillar in Goleman's model, technically, but you could argue it's the most critical social skill for a leader. It's the ability to perceive, to acknowledge somebody else's state of mind, their emotions, and use that to build real rapport.
And there's data on this in the workplace?
Oh yeah, loads. What's fascinating is the direct link. Empathetic leadership is positively related to job performance, especially, and this is interesting, once you rise above that mid-level manager rank.
That makes intuitive sense, though. If your manager actually gets you, you're probably going to do better work. But We often mix up empathy with sympathy. What's the practical difference for a leader?
Yeah, this is a really crucial distinction. Sympathy is more like feeling sorry for someone. Their feelings of pity, maybe sorrow, but often without truly inhabiting or understanding their situation. It can maintain a bit of distance.
Empathy, on the other hand, is the capacity to genuinely imagine yourself in another person's shoes, so to speak, trying to experience their own thoughts, their emotions, almost alongside them.
Empathy is almost always found to be more productive because it demands connection, maybe even action. Sympathy can be quite passive.
Got it. So, if I'm a leader aiming for empathy, what does that actually look like day to day? How do I show it?
It shows up in specific proactive behaviors. For instance, high-performing, empathetic leaders, they watch closely for signs of burnout in their people before it becomes a full-blown crisis.
Proactive, exactly.
They show sincere interest in the needs and hopes of their team members, not just the performance metrics, you know? And they demonstrate genuine compassion during personal challenges like a loss or illness. They get that they're leading a whole human being, not just an employee ID.
That idea of deep, empathetic connection feels like the perfect bridge to what some call the highest gear of successful leadership, transformational leadership.
It really is. It creates this tremendous gravitational pull. Transformational leadership, or TL, it was defined by Burns and later Bass. It's the style that motivates followers to achieve more than they even thought they could.
More than planned.
Yeah, more than they initially planned. It moves way beyond those simple transactional relationships, the work for pay exchange. It works by aligning the followers' personal values with the bigger organizational values.
Creates real shared purpose.
TL relies on inspiration, vision, challenging people to think differently.
Do we need to list all the components? Maybe, but let's talk outcomes. How does the shared purpose actually influence the organization as a whole?
Oh, it hits every layer. For one, it dramatically clarifies the organizational vision. Transformational leaders don't just hand out tasks, they articulate a compelling shared future. And that literally changes how followers frame problems, how they see new opportunities.
Okay, this also fuels and sustains a really positive organizational culture.
And that leads directly to increased commitment, productivity, innovation, the works.
And the research mentioned this concept. It sounds a bit academic, but it seems very important in practice. Organizational citizenship behavior, OCB.
Yes, OCB. It's a great way to capture how the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. OCB is basically the term researchers use for that positive, selfless, voluntary stuff people do that goes beyond their job description.
Like helping out a colleague.
Exactly, like a colleague going out of their way to help a teammate finish a tough project, not because they're getting paid extra or told to, but because they genuinely feel invested in the team's success, the shared mission. Transformational leadership is a powerful driver of this kind of altruism.
So it impacts the organization, but this style also transforms the individual follower, right?
Absolutely. It significantly improves personal outcomes for them, too. For instance, followers consistently report feeling greater empowerment. Also, they feel encouraged to think for themselves, to develop fresh ideas, maybe even to challenge outdated rules or processes that aren't serving the mission anymore.
This also boosts their self-efficacy.
That's the followers' belief in their own ability to succeed. It makes sense, right? When a leader shows genuine confidence in you, invests in you, you start believing it yourself.
Yep, definitely. And ultimately, this whole approach builds profound trust and commitment. That's the bedrock of any strong leader follower relationship. Real loyalty.
Okay, so we've painted this picture of the ideal leader. Emotionally intelligent, inspiring, transformational. But now, now we have to pivot. We need to look at the internal battlefield, that danger zone, where those very same traits, confidence, ambition, drive, can turn toxic.
This is the absolute central tension of leadership, isn't it? Finding that right sized ego. Look, a successful, healthy leader needs strong confidence. Absolutely. But crucially, they also possess humility.
What does that look like?
It means they actively seek feedback. They recognize their own flaws, their blind spots, and importantly, they can admit when they are wrong without completely collapsing or getting defensive.
Okay. And what happens when that healthy confidence tips over into just pure egotism?
That's when the self-image, it completely takes over. An egotistical leader starts to overestimate their own abilities, they refuse to acknowledge gaps in their knowledge, and they'll actively defend mistakes rather than seeing them as learning opportunities.
Yeah, their energy shifts entirely. It's no longer about serving the mission, it's about serving their own need for validation. The whole game becomes about being seen as right, often at any cost. And let me tell you, that drives talented people away faster than almost anything else.
And the sources take that even further to the extreme end of the spectrum, narcissism.
Right. Narcissistic leaders, they're characterized by this grandiose sense of self-importance, a deep-seated belief in their own entitlement, and, critically, a significant lack of genuine empathy.
So they don't connect with others in the same way.
Not really. They often become interpersonally exploitative. They tend to see other people primarily as tools, as means to achieve their own goals. And when this type of leader gets hold of significant, prolonged power, they risk developing something really dangerous. The sources call it the hubris syndrome.
Hubris syndrome. That sounds almost like a clinical diagnosis, like an acquired personality disorder triggered specifically by having too much power for too long.
That's exactly how the source material describes it. And its elements are frankly alarming. They start seeing the world purely as an arena for their own personal glory. They develop contempt for any kind of criticism or advice, and they stop listening completely,
They risk losing touch with reality.
essentially living in a self-reinforcing bubble. And because of that, they become prone to making incredibly reckless decisions, often because they genuinely believe they're somehow special, uniquely untouchable, maybe only accountable to history or some grand narrative.
Wow. And yet, here's where the source data throws a curveball, something that really complicates things: the narcissism paradox. It seems not all of that ambitious, confident drive is automatically destructive.
This is such a critical nuance. It's what separates, sustainable success from those spectacular flameouts we see. The sources looked at these highly successful 10x founders, people who built incredibly valuable companies, and they found many of them could be described as disciplined narcissists.
Disciplined narcissists? What does that mean?
It means they were incredibly ambitious, yes, profoundly confident in their vision and abilities, but, and this is the key, their drive was tempered. They scored surprisingly high on measures like empathy, patience, and emotional control.
They had a kind of ethical grounding or framework.
They still had the engine, the ambition, but they also had the steering wheel and the brakes, regulation.
Precisely. Their less successful counterparts, often just as ambitious, were emotionally unregulated. their drive manifested as aggression, conflict, coercion. The disciplined ones understood, maybe implicitly, that their confidence had to serve the mission, not just their own self-image.
Fascinating distinction, but okay. Even if a leader manages to keep their ego in check, they still face this invisible sabotage from their own brain, cognitive bias.
These mental shortcuts we all use, leaders need to be extra vigilant.
Oh, absolutely. Every single human brain relies on these shortcuts, these heuristics to navigate the world. But a leader's bias doesn't just affect them, it can impact hundreds, even thousands of people.
Give us an example.
Okay, take affinity bias. That's the tendency to favor people who remind you of yourself. Maybe they went to the same school, like the same sports team.
This is the root of that infamous beer test in hiring, where you ask, would I want to have a beer with this person?
Exactly. And while it seems harmless, it subconsciously disadvantages diversity of thought, background, experience, ultimately hindering innovation.
And here's one we see play out tragically in big organizational failures all the time: confirmation bias.
Oh, this one's huge. It's that powerful, often unconscious tendency to seek out, interpret, and place far more value on evidence that confirms what you already believe or the plan you've already committed to,
And ignore the rest.
and rapidly discount, dismiss, or simply fail to notice any evidence that contradicts it. It effectively turns a leader deaf to vital, dissenting feedback, even when it's staring them in the face.
And when we're judging other people's behavior, we run into the fundamental attribution error.
Yes, this error makes us overemphasize personality traits or character flaws and ignore situational factors when we're trying to understand why someone acted a certain way.
For example?
For example, assuming a valuable team member who is suddenly late or seems distracted must have a character flaw like laziness or lack of commitment. We jump to that conclusion instead of considering temporary situational factors, maybe like new caring responsibilities at home, which might just require a bit of flexibility or support.
Right, judging the person, not the situation.
Exactly. And finally, a bias that feels particularly critical now in our sort of post-pandemic hybrid working world, proximity bias.
Yes, this is a big one for modern leaders. It's the unconscious tendency to favor things and people that are physically closer to us or that we see more often.
So the people in the office get more attention.
Potentially, yes. If you're the leader who primarily works from the office, you have to actively, consciously work to mitigate this bias. Otherwise, you risk inadvertently disadvantaging your really high-performing remote or hyper team members simply because they aren't physically in your line of sight every day.
It requires deliberate effort to overcome. That just shows the sheer complexity of managing this internal battlefield.
Okay, to wrap up our toolkit, let's focus on the two critical skills the sources say are required to survive those biases and navigate this constant market volatility: resilience and flexibility.
These two really go hand in hand for modern leadership, don't they? Resilience is that ability to bounce back quickly from setbacks, to maintain performance even when things get tough, and to steer the organization through adversity while keeping a sense of optimism.
And it's not just about feeling it, right?
No, critically, resilient leaders don't just feel resilient, they actively model that behavior. They frame challenges not as disasters, but as opportunities for learning and growth. And that attitude then stabilizes and boosts their entire team's morale and performance.
And resilience needs its cognitive partner, which is flexibility.
Exactly. Flexibility or adaptability is about that open-mindedness. It's the skill of pivoting strategies swiftly and effectively to align with constantly changing demands or market conditions.
Can you give an example?
Sure. A flexible CEO, for instance, doesn't just panic during a period of economic instability. Instead, they might view it as an opportunity, perhaps to explore new, previously overlooked markets, or maybe develop innovative, lower-cost product offerings. Adaptability is really the antidote to institutional rigidity and stagnation.
But if we had to pinpoint one, maybe undervalued executive skill that seems to tie all of these threads together, from self-awareness, emotional control, bias management, right through to resilience, the sources seem to land on reflection.
It absolutely is the ultimate integrating skill. The sources really underscore this. The most effective leaders are highly self-reflective. They understand that to avoid making those impulsive, gut reaction decisions, the ones that often lead to expensive, time-consuming rework later, they must deliberately carve out white space for thinking.
White space, meaning just quiet time, no meetings, no emails.
Exactly. Intentional quiet time. Maybe no phones, no screens, just dedicated cognitive downtime. It's in that space you gain clarity. You start to notice patterns you missed in the day-to-day chaos. And crucially, it's where you consciously check your ego, question your assumptions, and examine your potential biases.
Makes sense, yeah. I love that quote from the founder in the source material who had this realization. Half my problems, he said, were the result of not thinking before saying yes. Just that simple act of pausing.
That realization, that ongoing dedication to structured self-critique, continual learning, that is the essence of sustained leadership success.
That really takes us full circle, doesn't it? This commitment to growth, always learning, actively seeking feedback, making time for reflection. That's what transforms whatever innate potential someone has into reliable, effective, sustained success over the long haul.
It's the journey, really, from just being competent or maybe even brilliant in bursts to being truly mature, insightful, and transformative as a leader.
So, to try and summarize our deep dive today into the leader's internal world, it sounds like you need that relational foundation of emotional intelligence, especially empathy.
You need that forward-pulling, shared purpose vision of transformational leadership.
And underpinning it all, you need that relentless internal discipline to regulate your ego, challenge your biases, and constantly adapt through deliberate reflection.
That's a great summary. And maybe the ultimate dividing line for success, when you boil it all down, isn't really how loud or how confident a leader appears on the surface. It's their self-awareness. The truly exceptional leaders, the sources suggest, achieve a kind of psychological maturity. They learn to hold the tension of a paradox. They can operate simultaneously under the belief, okay, I am extraordinary, I have unique talents, but I am not the whole story. I don't have all the answers.
That's a powerful idea.
It is. So the challenge, maybe for you listening, is this. Can you take an honest look and identify the specific characteristics of your own confidence, your own drive? Which parts truly serve the mission, the team, the organization? And which parts, if you're really honest, might just be serving your own self-image?
Great work today. Keep going. Every lesson helps you improve your English. I'm excited to see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more fun lessons. Keep learning and see you again soon.